Tom, welcome. How are you?
Good morning, Sean. I'm well, thank you. I heard you mention the crazy American before, whose name we don't need to bring up, but I thought it tied in nicely. It was funny. I thought about him moments before you said that, which is a little bit scary at this time of the morning.
Now, which crazy American? Because there are so many of them.
Oh, the one, the billionaire that runs his conspiracy
Steve Kirsch.
outlet, let's say.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you're talking about Trump.
You know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
No, Jones. Excuse me. Anyway, look, I just thought there's a couple of interesting things that sort of tie together here this morning with Kate Hanna and co, and how it ties into what I just mentioned, which is that look, I think that the fundamental principle that the what are they called? The disinformation project boil everything down to is the concept that speech can indeed be violent, and I think that is the fundamental flaw in the entire, let's say, woke logic that this is all being born out of, and why I sort of say that is that that seems to be the principle in which all of their ideas of shutting down speech are justified by. Now, to flip to the other side of the coin, when I was a young teenager / early 20s, I fell down the rabbit hole of disinformation, and 9/11 was an inside job, and all of the other.
How long ago? How old are you now, Tom? I'm kind of interested. How old are you now?
I'm pushing 40.
Okay, all right.
Just under the age of 40. Yep. So this was almost 20 years ago, I suppose. But what's interesting, in my opinion, and this is of course just me looking at myself in some respects, but introspection, is that I went, full into that side of things. I thought that everything was a conspiracy. Everything, the World Bank was coming after everybody. Blah 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 blah. The whole kit and caboodle. But interestingly, firstly, I'm a small business owner. I think I came out all right. I figured it all out to be nonsense myself, and interestingly, you could make the argument that is how I developed my critical thinking skills. And
by going to the dark side and then coming back from it, kind of.
Exactly, yeah. As more and more time goes on, the same principles that make you believe in conspiracy theories are the same principles that then make you realise they're complete nonsense.
Have you got a bit of time, mate?
Sure.
Okay, look, because I'm really interested in this call. It's not often you get someone who admits to have been down the rabbit hole and having jumped or climbed out of it. What was appealing to you in retrospect to the idea that, say, 9/11 was a conspiracy?
I think it was probably the fundamental idea that things were very difficult to get ahead, and as such, something had to be wrong. Something was
You had
not
to have
right
someone to blame for your frustration?
Yes, that's probably a good way of looking at it, or perhaps even an excuse to not have to take responsibility for the situation that I found myself in. Yes.
See, I think you've got true wisdom, Tom. If you can see it in those, and I'm so fascinated that so quickly you gave those terms. You use conspiracy to avoid responsibility, perhaps for some of the bad things you've done, the dumb things you've done, the things you hadn't learned quick enough. Because I look at the stuff that goes wrong in my life, mostly it's down to me. Mostly it's to me not thinking hard enough. But it's so, I think a lot of us, myself included, we struggle with admitting our faults. We've got this slightly psychotic view of ourselves as perfect. And once you get over yourself, it's actually a lot easier to modify your behaviour in a good way, and you do not spend anywhere near as much time blaming someone else for your mistakes.
That's right. Yes, and I think one of the challenges we're facing at the moment is that people are being siloed into these categories whereby they're not expected to think for themselves. It's essentially a laziness. It's almost a religion where believing in the woke essentially, again, devolves that responsibility to others. You don't have to think about it because the government's going to tell you how to think. Now that, ironically, you could say is heading down the conspiratorial path, but but, is there some grand conspiracy against free speech? Well, I would probably argue not. I would say that humans have a habit towards authoritarianism, and it's because it's easier. It requires less effort, and as such, we are constantly being drawn in by these easy processes that let us avoid having to, one, take responsibility for our country, and two, take responsibility for ourselves.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, do you see now that you have come through the conspiracy theory part of your life, the rabbit hole part of your life, do you realise what a pain up the arse you were to people? And can you pick people who are still there really quickly, and do they annoy you incredibly? Yes, very much so. It's funny, I used to be this little keyboard warrior thinking I could change people's opinions by telling them about all these, what was wrong with the world via And that they should do their research, right, Tom?
Yes. Yes, well, I wonder if you've heard that one before.
Just a few million times.
All you do is, the irony is that you just alienate yourself. And of course, your Facebook in that case becomes quieter and quieter. But interestingly, I sort of ended up moving away from social media in part as a result of that. And I look back in over the shoulder of my partner every now and again, and I do find it very ironic that the advertising on social media is often out and out, just nonsense, just things that arguably would be considered disinformation based on today's standards. But I just one point quickly. I think that the reason young people sucked into these things so easily is it's the need to believe. Religion's taken a back seat in our country for good or otherwise. However, the innate need for people to believe in something is still there, and I think young people who are floating around in the wind are very easily drawn in by any movement. It doesn't matter what the movement is. It's the need to believe and the need to feel relevant, and also it's nice to have company. So most of these things are wrapped in gloss. There's no doubt about it. And I think a lot of these people at the universities, especially hearing some nonsense earlier about the PhDs, they are silos, they are echo chambers, but those people do feel very, very, I want to say self-important, but what I mean is more belonging. They feel belonging to their cause.
Tom, I'd say a lot of conspiracy theorists too, a lot of anti-vaxxers and anti-mandate people are already religious, and some of them are older.
Yes.
The old crystal mung-bean munchers tend to be older.
I tell you what, it did affect my, I'd say my background affected my thought process in getting vaccinated. It took me longer than perhaps it should have, because I guess as a result of playing around on the internet too much as a young fella, I've become... The problem you get is you become extremely critical to the point where you're almost a contrarian just by default. And of course, that leads you to, well, if the government says jump, you say F off, not how high. And that did impact my behaviour, and that's intriguing even to myself in more recent times in retrospect.
What snapped you out of it, Tom? Was it the love of a good woman?
What snapped me out of it? No, I think it's... I do have a good partner. She's a wonderful lady. It was probably more that the realities of the world kept slapping me in the face. And also the fact that living... I was never really a basement dweller, you could say, but in saying that, there's not a lot of virtue to be found in front of a computer screen. And so I found myself more... I'm in the Canterbury region, so we had the earthquakes, and that meant extremely busy workload for a very long time, but it also meant actually being out and about with lots of people who were in different states of suffering, and it really just brought home how completely irrelevant what was going on in America was to what was happening to individuals on the streets here with broken...
Geez, Tom, you're a man after my own heart. People who spend time obsessing about Trump or Hunter Biden, the real world they live in is right outside their front door. They just need to get out there and get into it.
That's exactly it. Yep. And look, I mean, it's not to say we should ignore international politics entirely. It's just to remember that the people who are in your immediate vicinity are actually the.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, we got him there still? Yeah, we have. We still got you, Tom? Yeah,
Yes, I've got you.
Yeah. Tom, I want to ask, how long have you been listening to the platform, and why?
Well, I must have been pretty close off the mark when you kick-started. I've been listening to you for quite some time, over many years, Radio Live days, I think, when I first bumped into you. So when you left the airwaves, I just saw this sort of massive chasm in the way media was being delivered, and I remember saying to my partner many times, "Where is Sean gone? What's he up to? Surely he's doing something." Now, I don't have much of a social media presence, so I probably missed some of your output there. But pretty much I'd say from day one, but, I was sort of quietly hoping you were up to something.
Yeah. Tom, I'm so pleased to have met you, mate. That was a really good conversation. So glad you crawled your way out of the rabbit hole. And that you are a regular listener to the platform. It's people like you that I do it for. So thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Be nice to meet you one day. I look forward to shaking your hand sometime.
Good on you. That is Tom from Christchurch, no longer a conspiracy theorist. Wasn't that interesting?